Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGOTraders. My name is Taryn, and this is Ixalan Preview coverage. Alright guys, if you kind of figured out, this is actually going to be a catch-up video from last week's preview coverage. I didn't get to actually make a comment on any of the cards that were released. I didn't have internet at the time, I was moving. I got internet at the very end of the week. I streamed on Friday for you guys, and that's been about it for me. So a lot of these cards I'm actually coming in on cold, but I am excited to talk about the new Planeswalkers, the new Legendary Rule, all the cards that are spoiled, so let's just hop right into it. We're going to talk about white first, and first up we have Ixalan's Binding for 3 colorless and 1 white mana for an enchantment. When Ixalan's Binding enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Ixalan's Binding leaves the battlefield. Your opponent can't cast spells with the same name as the exiled card. In Draft and in Sealed, this card is going to be a snap pick for removal if you're in white. I think this card is going to be always played. Again, removal is highly sought after in that format. I think in Standard this card might actually replace Cast Out depending on where the meta goes. I know one of the things that makes me feel bad is usually when I pay 4 mana for a Cast Out on their turn with Flash, get rid of their Glorybringer, and then the following turn they cast another Glorybringer. That sucks. This card helps remedy that. Even though you're not casting it for Flash on their turn, you do get the added ability that they can't cast the follow-up spell if it's the same card. I think that is super good. It might see some play main board in Standard. I know it's going to be seeing some play in sideboard strategies, but main board replacing Cast Out? Maybe? I think so, yeah. Next up we have Bellowing Agisar. The pronunciations of these cards is going to be rough today. Just letting you know. We have 5 colorless and 1 white mana for a 3/5 dinosaur with Enrage. Whenever Bellowing Agisar is dealt damage, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Now in a draft or sealed environment, this might not be great. It just depends on how many self-damaging cards you have in the meta. I'm not sure that this will see any kind of play besides a white-red deck in these sealed strategies. And in Standard, I don't know either. I mean, it's 6 mana. It's a lot for Standard to kind of wrap its head around. But there are a ton of cards in the new set right now that are super expensive so far. So there could be some sort of like dinosaur tribal thing going on here. I'm not 100% sure. But what I am for sure is that if you play this in Draft and in Sealed, it's a huge bomb, and it's basically a win more if you have the abilities to ping your Bellowing Agisar and do some extra damage and actually widen your board state even more. I think this card is great for that, but as far as Standard goes, I mean, I gotta see this energy so far, and I'm not seeing it just yet. Moving up the chain, we have Ashes of the Abhorrent for 1 colorless and 1 white mana for an enchantment. Players can't cast spells from graveyards or activate abilities of cards in graveyards. Whenever a creature dies, you gain 1 life. This card, oh, it's so nice. It's so nice. I think it's amazing, actually. Even though there are a lot of things that are rotating out in Standard with Delirium kind of be turned on, there are a lot of Eternalize and Embalm situations going on, as well as God Pharaoh's Gifts and all that kind of stuff. So I think Ashes of the Abhorrent will probably be a great sideboard card in Standard. In Draft and Sealed, this card might actually be like passed over because I'm not seeing any kind of graveyard interaction so far in the set. But I think Ashes of the Abhorrent is basically the answer to a lot of the graveyard strategies that we were dealing with. And then Ixalan comes out, a lot of those graveyard strategies rotated out, and now we're having to basically be like, well, this card is still good, but it's not as good as it would have been. So that's where I'm at on this. I think it has a lot of Standard capabilities, though. I think it might have some modern capabilities, and yeah, it's really good. Of course, I wouldn't mainboard this card at all. This is definitely a sideboard tech for the ages, though. Moving up the chain, we have Bishop of Rebirth. It's 3 colorless, 2 white mana for a 3/4 Vampire Cleric, which is like an oxymoron, but hey, we've got a lot of them in this set. It has Vigilance, and whenever Bishop of Rebirth attacks, you may return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. This is kind of just a bulk rare to me. I like the ability. For 5 mana, this is kind of a lot. In Draft and Sealed, this might just be played as a 3/4 Vigilance guy. I'm not really so sure that it'll see any kind of Standard play with that ability. I wouldn't even think about Modern. Maybe an EDH because it is a Vampire Cleric in white, so that's interesting. But yeah, this is kind of one of those rares that I kind of feel bad for if I draw into. I think it's going to be good probably in Draft and Sealed, obviously, but in Standard, I mean, you gotta show me what else this can work with. Again, for 5 mana, this is a lot. Moving on up the chain, we have Goring Serratops. Beautiful art, by the way. It's 5 colorless, 2 white mana for a 3/3 dinosaur with Double Strike. Whenever Goring Serratops attacks other creatures you control, gain Double Strike until end of turn. This card is a win more if I have ever saw a win more. Not only is the art amazing, in Draft and in Sealed, this card is going to be your like windmill slam, top deck, super turbo Kaioken Kamehameha Spirit Bomb attack that's going to win you the match. If they do not kill this guy whenever you swing out with him and your other creatures, they're going to lose. In Draft and Sealed, this might see some play. It really depends again on how many cards we have that actually give us mana. It's kind of funny actually because a lot of the dinosaurs seem like they're replacing the Eldrazi. We're moving away from Zendikar, getting into Ixalan, and it's just like instead of Eldrazi, we have a bunch of dinosaurs, which is cool. That's fine. It's better than you know, the tentacle people. I'm okay with that. But yeah, standard, this might see some sort of like build around deck just because that ability is so silly. But for 7 mana, I don't see it kind of making any headway. But in Draft and Sealed, if you have the mana and you have the ability to play this, dude, just go nuts. This card is crazy. In EDH though, I think this card is where it's really at. Would love to see if we can make a dinosaur tribal deck in EDH. That would be awesome. Moving on up, we have Kingjollies Sunwing is 2 colorless, 1 white mana for a 2/3 dinosaur with flying. Creatures your opponents control into the battlefield tapped. I think this card is basically replacing Thalia, and that's okay. I think that's fine. It's not as good as Thalia, obviously. I don't think it'll replace Thalia in any of the Death and Taxes decks in Modern. I think flying is important, however, so they might be considering for that, but I think the reason that Thalia is so good is the non-basic land clause as well. So this card is so close, but no cigar. I think it might see some standard play, obviously, but anything else, I mean, it's fine. In Draft and Sealed, if this is your rare, I would feel bad, but it is a 2/3 flyer for 3, so that's not terrible. It's just not great. The tempo swing is more important, I think, in Standard and in Modern. I think the coming in tapped ability in Draft is not as important because basically you either flood out or you go really wide. So it's really going to be basically a case of can you pump this guy to have the win in Draft and Sealed. So, but let me know, guys. I'm really kind of like torn on this. I think it will be really good in maybe Modern and probably Standard. But in Draft and Sealed, I mean, it's a 2/3 flyer for 3. I mean, it's great. That's already great. The clause is just gravy, you know. So. All right, let's go up to Maverin Fane Dusk Apostle. 2 colorless, 1 white mana for a 2/2 vampire cleric. Legendary creature, by the way. Whenever 1 or more non-token vampires you control attacks, create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. This card is super good. I can't wait to make a vampire tribal deck in this set. Just letting you guys know. I'm a fan of tribal decks. Ixalan is like, it's like my dreams are coming true. So many things I'm excited for. But yeah, this card is great. It's awesome on your curve. I wish that it had a kind of a bigger butt. I wish it was a 2/3 instead of a 2/2. In Draft and Sealed, if you pull this as your rare, you should definitely take it. And if you get into the vampire strategy, then it's going to be a win more strategy for you. I think it's awesome. I think it's one of those cards that if you can build around it in Draft and Sealed, you're going to windmill slam win. I think if you build around this in Standard, I think it's going to be really fun. And a lot of cards that are vampires are rotating out thanks to Zendikar, but we have just as many rotating in from Ixalan. So I think that's awesome. Let's just hope there are enough in there that I don't have to use the Metallic Mimic again. As far as EDH goes, this card is actually really good. I'm not sure about being a commander, obviously, because there isn't enough vampires in white really yet. But that would be really fun if there is in the future. But I know it has some potential. As far as Modern goes, I mean, whatever. It's alright. It's whatever. Alright, moving up to we have Priest of the Wakening Sun, 1 white mana for a 1/1 human cleric. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may reveal a dinosaur card from your hand. If you do, you gain 2 life. Pay 3 colorless mana and 2 white, sacrifice Priest of the Wakening Sun, search your library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Okay, so if you are playing a dinosaur tribal deck in Standard, this card is really good. It's going to be basically your turn 1 play. You're going to be gaining life the next turn. And if he stays on the field, you can actually sack him and draw into your giant bomb or tutor into your giant bomb for the mid to late game. My only concern is that it has a 1/1, so it's probably just going to immediately die. Also, in most tribal decks, you don't really want to be tutoring, so maybe this will be good in Draft and Sealed instead of Standard. I think that's probably my assessment there. But it's definitely going to be one of those cards that if you pull this in Draft or in Sealed, you're going to look at it and say, okay, so I need to actually have a really good bomb for a dinosaur if I have this in my deck. So that's basically where I'm looking at it from. In Standard, again, I'm not really excited for it. We kind of need to see more pieces with Priest of the Awakening Sun for it to kind of work for me. But again, in Tribal, like, I really don't want to be tutoring out my big bombs for 5 mana. That's a little weird for me. But the life gain is relevant. I think that's really good for just 1 mana. Moving on up, we have Sanguine Sacrament. It's X and 2 white mana for an instant. You gain twice X life. Put Sanguine Sacrament on the bottom of its owner's library. Guys, don't play this card. So for 4 mana, you gain 4 life, basically. No, I don't want to do that. I mean, the ability to have it go back into your deck is fine, but at the same time, it's 4 mana for 4 life, and that's you're doing something wrong if you do that. I mean, I can do that for 1 green mana right now in Standard, so that's something that I wouldn't recommend to anybody right now. I think it's one of those bulk rare cards. You're just gonna look at it and go, "That's interesting," but besides that, I would pass over it. That's my opinion. But a card I wouldn't pass over is Settle the Records, 2 colorless, 2 white mana for an instant. Exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That player may search his or her library for that many basic land cards, put those cards on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. This card is insanity. This is Path to Exile, but like mass Path to Exile. Super good. I'm assuming this will probably be replacing like Fumigates, probably some Hour Devastations in people's decks. I mean, there are no downsides. For 4 mana, it's basically a 4 mana Wrath without it technically being a 4 mana Wrath. If this is your pick in Drafted and Sealed, you're gonna want to run white. If this is a card you want to be playing with in Standard, you're definitely going to be wanting to maybe play into a control strategy, or just have this in the sideboard ready to go if you're up against an aggressive strategy. I think this card is great. I probably might see some modern play. I'm not really sure there, but a mass board wipe, it's basically Path to Exile, is really, really good, guys. And again, in EDH, this card is super good too, so, I mean, it's just insane. I would note, though, that it says exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That could be you as well, so you can actually, you know, attack out with 3 creatures, pay 4 mana, and get 3 basic lands onto the battlefield. So that's actually pretty decent too. So always look out for that kind of like roundabout play. I think that's one of the things about cards in Modern especially that make it have legs. So I think Settle the Wreckage probably will land somewhere in Modern. Most likely will be in Standard forever until it rotates. Obviously, it will be played heavily in Standard is what I'm trying to say. And in Drafted and Sealed, this card is totally super good. Moving on up though, we have Katli, Honor Guard. We have 1 colorless, 1 white mana for a 1/3 human soldier. Creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. This card is so good. What is it? It's like Topper Orb on a stick basically, or on a creature for Modern. For Standard, this card is actually super good. It's going to be locking down kind of triggers for like a Torrential Gearhulk, things like that. Any of the Gearhulks, obviously. Any unit of the battlefield ability, obviously. You know, it's super good. In Drafted and Sealed, though, this might just be a 1/3 body, and that's perfectly fine. But I would feel bad if this was your rare, because it's not like as impactful as it needs to be for a Draft and Sealed environment, where most of that's going to be a creature-based strategy. Because I'm not really seeing a bunch in this meta, especially in this set specifically, that have entered the battlefield abilities that do a lot. So this is going to be really great for Standard, probably a sideboard card for some lockdown. Maybe going to be in a Azurius control strategy, perhaps. But besides that, this card is super good. And it might see some Topper Orb like Modern play. I'm not really sure about that. EDH too, though. If we want to have a lockdown strategy in EDH, this card is super dumb as well. Okay, that is it for the white cards. Let's move on to the blue real quick. First up, we have Prosperous Pirates. By the way, pirates, I love them. I can't live without them. It's awesome. For 4 colorless mana and 1 blue, we have a 3/4 human pirate. Whenever Prosperous Pirate enters the battlefield, create 2 colorless treasure artifact tokens with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So basically, this is going to be like the Eldrazi spawn replacement in this set, since dinosaurs are so large. So you have to ramp up basically to play your dinosaurs out. I think the treasure idea is really cool. I think this card, however, is sort of bad and probably will only be played in Draft and Sealed as like a 15th or 16th pick in your initial creature-based strategy. Not too hot on it, but if there's a situation where the treasures win you the game, this might actually come in handy later. So I would look out for that. But besides that, I wouldn't play this in Standard at all, unless you want to be just a cool human pirate deck. But yeah. Stay away. All right, the next card we have is actually, I need to translate it real quick. So it's Deep Root Waters. It is 2 colorless and 1 blue mana for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a Merfolk spell, create a 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token with hexproof. That is really, really good. And this is actually uncommon. So are we like, is Simic Merfolk going to be like ridiculously good in standard? I think so. This card is crazy. Heck, 1/1 hexproof creatures, like unless they have board wipe spells on them, then they're just there forever. This card is good. This card is too good. I feel like this card is probably going to be in modern. Like what for an uncommon? If you're in draft and sealed, if you're in the Merfolk tribal situation going on here, this card is a win more. This card is crazy good. This card is going to gain you a bunch of tempo. It's basically like an Catcher's Monument, but it makes a 1/1 with hexproof. So that's ridiculous. In standard, if you're making a Merfolk tribal deck, then this is the card you want in your deck. It's only 3 mana. It's going to basically make you an army of creatures for 3 mana for free, turn over turn. They can't be targeted for anything. So I feel like I might be overhyping this card a little bit, but at the same time, I don't think I am. EDH Merfolk decks, this card is going to be crazy good for you as well. And yeah, I might be seeing some play or some testing at least in the modern Merfolk deck. This card is just crazy. I can't get over it. Like, it's an uncommon. What? I know this really doesn't work that well in modern with Aether Vial, but again, like, it's worth testing. That's what I'm saying, basically. Alright, moving on, we have another card, Arcane Adaptation for 2 colorless, 1 blue mana for an enchantment. As Arcane Adaptation enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control are their chosen types in addition to their other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So this is basically your tribal card if you don't have a tribal card in your deck. Okay. I think this is really good for like EDH. I'm not really so sure about standard, modern, draft, anything besides EDH. It's really like interesting. There might be some cool interaction in modern that I'm missing so far, but it's Conspiracy in blue, and that's fine. And it's like 2 mana cheaper, so I think that's really good. I don't see anything besides that being, talked about. It's all right. I mean, play it in EDH. Moving on up, we have Daring Saboteur for 1 colorless and 1 blue mana. This is that basically just like a baby Jace? What is this? It's a 2/1 and you can pay 2 colorless and 1 blue mana. Daring Saboteur can't be blocked this turn, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So it basically can be your 2 mana play in draft, swing in, pay 3 mana, unblockable, and you can loot. I think that's great. I think that's probably the best that looting has been in a while for blue. I think this could probably have gotten away with just being an uncommon, not a rare. But, I'm not with WotC, and they may have a different opinion on that. Obviously, they made it a rare, so I think it's probably going to see some play in draft and sealed, obviously. Maybe in a tribal pirate deck in standard, and probably an EDH pirate deck as well. But I don't really see anywhere else this card could really apply. Not really looking at a modern card here at all. I think it might be something interesting because of the unblockable, basically, in draft and sealed. But we'll kind of have to see for that. But I like the looting ability if it does get in, so that's good. Moving on up, we've got Dreamcaller Siren, 2 colorless, 2 blue mana for a 3/3 Siren Pirate with flash, flying, and it can only block creatures with flying, which is weird. And when Dreamcaller Siren enters the battlefield, if you control another pirate, tap up to 2 target non-land permanents. Ooh, this card is not that great. I think it's good for draft and sealed, obviously, but the tap clauses for 4 mana, it just does a lot of stuff that I'm just not really excited about. So a 3/3 for 4 flash flyer is great in draft and in sealed, and I would pick that every single day of the week if I'm in blue. In standard, I don't think this will be great in a pirate deck. I don't think it would be great in like hardly anything because it can't block anything except flyers. So, and it's only a 3/3, so it's just going to be like either harness lightning out of the sky really quickly or just trade, and I'm not excited about that. So, and tapping down, it's really just a tempo play for draft or sealed in a creature heavy strategy. So I'm not really seeing this in a standard or modern situation. EDH players, I mean, you guys can have fun with that, but yeah, this is basically to me just a bulk rare that's going to be in draft and sealed. Yeah, but let me know in the comments below for sure. Moving on, we have Entrancing Melody for X and 2 blue for a sorcery. Gain control of target creature with converted mana cost X. This card is super interesting. a lot of people have been kind of talking to me about this being basically like a strictly better version of Dominate. However, it's not an instant, so that is kind of a bad thing for me. But I think for 7 mana, if I can take a Glorybringer, that's pretty decent. If I'm in a Simic strategy where I can ramp at all, I think that's really good as well. So it really depends on where this card's going to land in the meta in Standard. I think in Draft and Seal, this card is going to be the thing that steals basically your opponent's bomb. And that's going to be like crazy, like sassy for you. Like you just have lots of sass when you do this. You're just going to be like, oh, you played that big bomb? No problem. I'll just take that and put it on my side of the field. No, thank you so much. You know, that's one of those situations where I love it. In Standard, might see some sideboard play. Maybe some like Fog deck would love this card. Modern, not going to see any play. EDH, I think this is a really fun EDH card. It just kind of screams EDH personally. And I love the flavor text in this card. It's the stronger the will, the more bewitching the song. I think it's probably just going to be a sideboard standard card, maybe a brewable card, but in Draft and Seal, this would be fun to play with. Moving on, we have Herald of Secret Streams, 3 colorless, 1 blue mana for a 2/3 Merfolk Warrior. Creatures you control with a +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. This card is actually pretty decent. Now, I'm not sure what kind of strategy this will be put into. I know Black-Green now has a counter strategy with Winding Constrictor, so we might see some blue being splashed in there with Herald if you want to have an unblockable team. That would be really awesome. Maybe a Simic situation with Virtuous Gearhulk and this card, making your entire team unblockable. I think that's really cool. Again, it's only a 2/3 though, so it's probably just going to be susceptible to a removal spell that has no kind of protection on top of it. And for 4 mana, I would love to have some kind of protection on top of this. In Draft and in Seal, this card is great. If we have the ability to put +1/+1 counters on creatures, we have that dinosaur from earlier in white that does that, so this might be for that as well. So I think that's interesting, but besides that, I'm not really so sure. I think maybe in a Merfolk tribal deck in Standard. This is definitely too expensive for a Modern deck. For EDH though, I think this card you can actually go wild. This card is really cool, and it could be a really cool way to win a match. Moving on to the next card, we have Jace, Cunning Castaway. It's 1 colorless, 2 blue for a 3 loyalty counter legendary planeswalker Jace. You can +1 it whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card, then discard a card. So loot for 1. -2, create a 2/2 blue illusion creature token with whenever this creature becomes target of a spell, sacrifice it. And -5, create 2 tokens that are copies of Jace, Cunning Castaway, except they're not legendary. Okay. Guys, I'm not, you know, for a 3 mana planeswalker, you think it would have like a lot of really good abilities. And the looting ability's fine. I mean, making a 2/2 is okay because it does technically protect himself, but having 3 loyalty, not having really any impact on the board immediately, and not being able to shut down any creatures makes this card really difficult for me to like. I think the only thing I do like about this card is probably the art because it's ridiculous. But yeah, I like this card as far as the art. I think if you pull it in Draft and Sealed, it might be a decent 3 mana guy. In Standard, you gotta really convince me if this card is gonna be somewhere in the meta. Right now, I'm not seeing it at all, and that's kind of bad. However, his ultimate is only at 5. It's not 7 or 6 or something crazy like that, so we could see it go off a little bit sooner, but I'm not like excited about it other than that. Also, if you guys weren't aware, the Planeswalker rules have changed slightly, so the Planeswalkers have now been basically given the legendary treatment now, so instead of having like, oh, you can only have 1 Jace out because it's called Jace or something like that, now they're just basically considered legendary creatures, and if they have different names at the beginning or at the top of their name, then they can actually be on the same field at the exact same time. So like Jace Cunning Castaway can be on the same field as like Jace the Mind Sculptor, stuff like that. Not really sure what that's going to do to Modern. Probably going to break it, make a lot of control decks a lot of fun. As far as Standard goes right now, we have like, what, 3 or 4 different versions of Nissa right now? So that'll be fun. But this is actually the only version of Jace besides the Planeswalker deck Jace that we're getting. So I'm not really that excited about the card. I think it's okay. I don't think it's terrible, but I definitely need to have someone like basically show me the case of why this Jace is good. It needs a creature for the +1 to be relevant. It makes itself extremely weak just to make a 2/2 that can be targeted by anything and then sack. And when it creates 2 more copies of itself, it's still not that great because you need creatures on the battlefield to do things. So I don't know, guys. I'm not feeling it. Not feeling it. Moving on, we have Kepala, Warden of Waves, 1 colorless, 2 blue mana for a 2/2 legendary creature, Merfolk Wizard. Merfolk Wizard. What is happening? Spells your opponents cast that target a Merfolk you control cost 2 more to cast. Ability abilities your opponents activate that target a merfolk you control cost 2 more to activate. This card is really good if you need to protect your tribal creatures. I think this is probably just specifically meant for Modern, although I don't think it's actually good enough for Modern, especially because it's a legendary creature and you can't play more than one of them. That's probably the biggest downside of the card overall. In Standard, this card's going to be probably pretty good if you're playing into the merfolk tribal deck. In Draft and in Sealed, this is a 3-mana 2/2, unless you have a lot of tribal merfolk in the actual deck that you're building in Draft and Sealed, then this card is probably going to be one you're going to want to pass in the mid to late drafting situation. So it's good. It's not amazing to me. I'm kind of leery about it being amazing in Merfolk Modern. There could be something there for it, but Kira Great Glass Spinner is probably what this card's trying to replace. But at the same time, Legendary Creature Claws. Why can't we just stack these? That would be awesome. Also, it's super squishy for the 2 toughness, so that's something as well that makes me kind of leery as well. I like it, but I'm not in love with it. I think it'll see a lot of standard play though. Moving on. Next up, we have River's Rebuke for 4 colorless and 2 blue mana for a sorcery. Return all non-land permanents target player controls to their owner's hand. For 6 mana, this is a pretty good board wipe in Draft, Sealed, Standard. Not for Modern, obviously, but for Draft, Sealed, and Standard, this is pretty decent. Again, it's only a one-sided board wipe, so that's actually super good in the Draft and Limited format. In Standard, it might see some sideboard play for the Merfolk deck or any kind of control strategy, whether you're trying to basically second Sun or hold off for a Torrential Gearhulk or something like that. Though in Modern, I don't see it seeing any kind of play. In EDH, though, I see this seeing a ton of play because it looks like a ton of fun, especially if you're playing up against an EDH opponent that uses tokens. This would suck a lot. Again, it bounces everything except lands. That's one of the best things about this card, and I think it will see definitely some Draft, Sealed, and Standard play. And that is it for the blue cards. Let's move on to the black real quick. And first up, we've got Queen's Bay Soldier, 1 colorless, 1 black mana for a 2/2 Vampire Soldier. That's it. It's a bear in black. So that's fun. Art looks cool. You know, that's all right. That's good. Moving on. We've got Deadeye Tormentor for 2 colorless, 1 black mana for a 2/2 human pirate with Raid, Raid's coming back, which is awesome. Whenever Deadeye Tormentor enters the battlefield, if you attack with a creature this turn, target opponent discards a card. In Draft and Sealed, this card is awesome because it gives you tempo. It makes your opponent discard cards, so they lose tempo. In Standard, this will not be played. Modern, this won't be played, and maybe it might be played in an EDH deck if someone's missing their 99th card or something. So play this in Draft and Sealed, basically to get your opponent to where they're in top deck mode so you can actually have the ability to win the match. That's where this card comes in handy. Moving up, we've got another card that needs to be translated. It's Deathless Ancient. So 4 colorless and 2 black mana for a 4/4 Vampire Knight with flying. Tap 3 untapped vampires you control. Return Deathless Ancient from your graveyard to your hand. Interesting. For 6 mana, this might see some sort of play in Standard. I'm not really excited about it just yet. There needs to be a lot of vampires in Standard for this to work, basically. But this is a ton of fun for EDH, absolutely. And in Draft and Sealed, if you have more than 2 vampires on the battlefield, this card is awesome. It's a really good bomb to close out a match if they remove it the first time. I think that's definitely where this card is going to be the haymaker in. I think in Standard, though, you got to convince me. Basically, 6 mana is a lot. Even replacing it, reanimating it, I'm not in love with it just yet. So I got to see more pieces of the puzzle for this to make sense for me in Standard. In Modern, though, this is not going to see play. And in EDH, this will probably see a bunch of really fun play. But yeah, the thing that really strikes me the most though is that it's an uncommon, so that's going to be really the thing that makes a lot of people excited, is that you're going to see this a lot in the Draft and Sealed environment. So look out for that and prepare for it. Moving up to one of the coolest cards in the set, we've got Walk the Plank, 2 black for a sorcery, destroy target non-merfolk creature. This card's really good. It's so good that if it wasn't a sorcery, it would be amazing. Because it's a sorcery, it's not as great as I want it to be. Obviously, it's a 2 mana kill spell, so it's going to be run in Standard regardless. One of the things that strikes me right now is that I love the art for this set. I love it. But yeah, I think it's going to see a lot of Draft and Sealed play for sure. I think it's going to see probably some Standard play. If not sideboard, then probably main board, if we're going up against a lot of Merfolk decks in the meta. In Modern, though, this won't see any play. It's just, because it's not an instant, it's not going to see play. And that's just kind of how it is with Modern. Moving on up, we've got Fathom Fleet Captain for 1 colorless, 1 black mana for a 2/1 human pirate with menace. And whenever Fathom Fleet Captain attacks, if you control another non-token pirate, you may pay 2 colorless. If you do, create a 2/2 black pirate creature token with menace. So this card is actually really decent if there's going to be a pirate tribal deck. It's going to be black-red or something like that. I like the sub-theme. I hate that this is only 1 toughness because it's going to be dying a lot when you don't want it to be dying. But if you can get this out in Draft and in Sealed and continue to swing in with other pirates on the board, this card is a tyrant of control. In Standard, I think this will probably be in the tribal deck, but again, you gotta convince me because of that 1 toughness. It's just so weak and available to being killed so quickly, and it doesn't pass the Fatal Push test, obviously. So that's going to be another problem for it as well. So I think it's a really good aggressive card. I think it's probably going to see a lot of play in a tribal deck, but besides that, I don't really see it seeing any other kind of play. In EDH, though, this will see a ton of play because it's a ton of fun to play with. Moving on up, we've got Bloodcrazed Paladin, 1 colorless, 1 black mana for a 1/1 Vampire Knight with Flash, which is interesting. Bloodcrazed Paladin enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature that died this turn. Say hello to the answer to the Fumigate riddle. Basically, if you have a wide board state in the meta, they're either going to Fumigate, Out of Devastation, or Sweltering Suns you. If you have this in your hand and they play those cards, then they're basically looking at a huge 5/5 or a 6/6 that just came in for 2 mana. That is crazy good, and I think it's going to be something in a lot of tribal decks, especially in the Vampire deck, obviously, that's going to be kind of answering those board wipes because we have so many in Standard at the moment. One thing to keep in mind, though, however, is that exiling does not kill your creatures, so they do not technically die. So don't cast this at the end of your turn. If you had creatures exiled, make sure that they actually went to the graveyard and died properly. If you cast it whenever a creature's exiled, their ability won't trigger, and you'll feel bad for spending your 2 mana on a creature that's just basically a 1/1. I like this card for tempo. I think this card's really great, and I can't wait to see what it's going to be in Standard. Moving on up, we've got Ruin Raider for 2 colorless and 1 black mana for a 3/2 Orc Pirate with Raid. At the beginning of your end step, if you attack the creature this turn, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. You lose life equal to that card's converted mana cost. The power on this card is actually pretty decent, but I'm not really in love with it just yet. I think the thing that makes me kind of stay away from it the most is that, again, it needs Raid to trigger this ability, so it might not be something that you want to be doing all the time as well. But, I mean, Dark Confidant is very good, so we could see this in Standard play, but I'm not exactly sure where. Perhaps in a low mana curve, red-black pirate deck. That would be really cool. It's definitely on theme for pirates, but I'm not really sure where we're going to see it just yet. I think it's great. In Draft and Sealed, it's just a 3 mana 3/2 that's going to be basically top decking you, and yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's hope that extra added tempo in Draft and Sealed wins you the match. In Standard, though, this might have some pieces to work around it that will be really great. In Modern, I mean, just play Dark Confidant. In EDH, if you're playing a pirate-themed commander deck, this is the card to pick. Next up, we've got Revell Enriches, 5 colorless and 1 black mana for an enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasured artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Ah! So white has a win the game clause, black now has a win the game clause. This is Yu-Gi-Oh! All over again. So after you assemble all 10 pieces of 10 treasures, you win the game. And I think that might be pretty easy in a black-blue treasures deck so far. All the cards we've kind of read so far have been pointing towards a black-blue or a black-blue-green strategy, creating lots of tokens. So you can make a treasure bounty and retire happily. For 5 mana, I think this card's really good. In Draft and Sealed, don't play this card. You'll feel bad playing it. I'm sure there's going to be a brew of it in Standard somewhere. And in Modern, probably not going to get played. In EDH, this card is going to get played. It's just too fun not to. And that's kind of where I'm at on this card. It's a ton of fun. And if I lose to this card, I'm just going to slow clap. That's basically how it goes with Approach. That's going to be how it goes with Revell Enriches. Next up, we've got Vraska's Contempt, 2 colorless, 2 black mana for an instant. Exile target creature or planeswalker, you gain 2 life. Come on, just give us Hero's Downfall. That's all we want. That's all we need, please. 4 mana planeswalker removal instant is not good enough. Planeswalkers are oppressive, we need removal for them, and paying 4 mana for an instant speed removal spell is not good enough, guys. Even if we gain the 2 life. If we gain 6 life, this card would still not be great. We need decent removal. We need 3 mana, we need Hero's Downfall. That's what we need. I mean, this is as close as we're gonna get, I guess, for this set. That's fine. I think it's good. I mean, it's going to have to be played, obviously. You know, I just feel sad. I just feel sad. I want Hero's Downfall. I'm not really mad at this card, I guess. It's just that I really want a 3 mana instant removal speed spell for planeswalkers in black. That's all I want. 4 mana is just a lot. It's just a lot. You're basically wasting an entire turn just to get rid of a planeswalker, and I don't think that's fair to the tempo of the match. But that's, you know, that's me. It's my opinion. This card's obviously going to get played, going to get sideboard, and everything black. So I would recommend pre-ordering your cards for sure. I'm just salty. I just want my hero's downfall, guys. All right, moving up, we've got Deadeye Tracker for 1 black mana. It's a 1/1 human pirate. You can pay 1 colorless, 1 black mana, tap it, exile 2 target cards from an opponent's graveyard. Deadeye Tracker Explores. Now, Explores is a mechanic we haven't covered just yet. It's reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand if it's a land, otherwise put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Then put that card back or put it into your graveyard. So that's actually pretty decent. Explore basically does 3 different things. If you draw into land, it goes into your hand. If you don't, you can actually put it into your graveyard or basically just scry, and you get a +1/+1 counter on Deadeye Tracker. It's also doing double duty for us as well, and getting rid of Godfrey's Gifts targets, getting rid of a Scrappy Scrounger target, anything like that in the graveyard that's in our opponent's graveyard that we need to get rid of. This card's going to help for only 2 mana. I think that's really good, and I probably think it's going to have a 4-of in the Pirate Tribal deck, for sure. Moving on up, we've got Boneyard Parlay for 5 colorless and 2 black mana for sorcery. Exile up to 5 target creature cards from graveyards. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put all cards from the pile of your choice into the battlefield under your control, and the rest into their owner's graveyards. So basically, in the mid to late game match, you can pick the best creatures that have died throughout the match, give them to your opponent, say, hey, which ones do you want me to have? And they can say, just this one. And yeah, it's fun. I think in Draft and Sealed, this is going to see like a ton of fun play. In EDH, this is going to be a ton of fun. In Standard, this probably won't be played because 7 mana is a lot to get to in Standard, as well as having 5 targets for Standard. Maybe against a Godfrey's deck, like a sideboard option, this would be really cool. But besides that, I don't see too much play for this in Standard. And of course, Modern's not going to touch this at all. So it's really good, and I think in Draft and in Sealed. So that's where I'm at on this card. Played in Draft and Sealed, have some fun. And if you're playing this in EDH, have even more fun. That's going to be it for this video. For the next video, I'll be covering the rest of the cards that were spoiled. And then on top of that, I'll be doing videos every single day this week for the Ixalan previews as well. So keep it locked right here to MTGOTraders. I've got your preview coverage. I've got your deck techs. I've got your live streams. Doing everything I can, guys. I'm wearing myself out. I'm just kidding. You're good. You're good. I'm having fun. This is a ton of fun, guys. I hope you like the new setup. I will be doing this a little bit more frequently, obviously this week and next week, until Ixalan releases. So I'll see you guys in the next video.